On a freezing, stormy night in a quiet small town, single dad Jake Turner was just trying to keep his tiny farmhouse warm for himself and his 7-year-old son, Noah. He had no idea his life was about to change forever. Because that night, a desperate knock echoed through the hallway, sharp, urgent, and shaking with fear. When Jake opened the door, he found a terrified woman soaked from the rain, holding a shivering little girl who looked too weak to even stand. The woman begged softly, "Please, my daughter is sick. We just need somewhere safe to stay for the night." Jake didn't know her name, her story, or the danger she might carry. But he could see the fear in her eyes, and the child leaning against her shoulder. And in that moment, kindness outweighed caution. Before we begin, if you love emotional stories about the power of kindness, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. You're watching Kindness Diaries, where every story reminds us that compassion can change lives. Her name was Emily, and her daughter was Lily. Jake invited them inside without a second thought. He helped the little girl out of her wet jacket and wrapped her in a warm blanket. Emily kept apologizing, saying she didn't want to be a burden, but Jake shook his head. "No one seeking safety is a burden," he said gently. Jake prepared warm tea and started the old wood-burning stove. Noah peeked from behind the hallway, curious about the guests. When Jake introduced them, Noah immediately walked up and handed Lily his favorite stuffed bear, saying she could borrow it until she feels better. Emily's eyes filled with tears. It had been a long time since someone treated her with genuine kindness. As the hours passed, Jake noticed something strange. Emily seemed nervous, constantly checking her phone, then quickly hiding it. She wasn't just scared, she was hiding from something. Still, Jake didn't push. He knew what fear looked like, and he knew everyone had their reasons. Later that night, Lily developed a fever. Jake drove them to the nearest urgent care in his rusty pickup truck. He stayed with them the entire time, buying medicine with the last $40 he had. When Emily protested, he replied, "If it were Noah, I'd pray someone would help him too." Emily stared at him as if no one had ever spoken to her that way before. When they returned to the farmhouse, Jake offered them his bedroom and slept on the couch. Emily refused until she saw Jake struggling with back pain from years of heavy construction work. She insisted he take the bed instead. But he refused again, saying, "You and Lily need it more than I do." The next morning, Lily woke up smiling. Her fever had broken. Emily made breakfast to thank Jake, though she seemed embarrassed by the simplicity of his kitchen, old cabinets, mismatched plates, and barely stocked shelves. As they ate, Jake shared bits of his life, how he lost his wife 3 years ago to a sudden illness, how he worked 2 jobs to keep the farmhouse, and how Noah was the reason he kept going. Emily listened quietly, absorbing every word. The more she heard, the more guilt settled in her chest. Because Emily wasn't who Jake thought she was. She wasn't a runaway. She wasn't poor. She wasn't struggling. Emily was one of the wealthiest women on the East Coast, a tech billionaire hiding from the world after a business betrayal and a toxic breakup that left her questioning everything. She left the city that week to clear her mind but ended up stranded in the storm when her rental car broke down. She didn't tell Jake her real identity because she wanted, for once, to be treated like a human being, not a headline or a bank account. After breakfast, Jake helped her call a towing company, but Emily suddenly grew nervous again. Before she could explain why, a black SUV pulled up the long dirt driveway. A well-dressed man stepped out and rushed toward Emily. "Ma'am, thank goodness. We've been searching everywhere." Jake froze. Emily's secret was unraveling. Emily sighed and pulled Jake aside. Her voice was soft, filled with shame and fear of judgment. "I should have told you earlier. I'm not who you think. My name is Emily Hart." Jake blinked. Everyone in the state knew that name. But instead of reacting with anger or surprise, he simply said, "Emily, you and your daughter needed help. That's all that mattered." Her breath hitched. No one had ever treated her so simply. So genuinely. Emily offered to repay Jake for everything he'd done, but he refused money. Still, she insisted on staying a little longer to thank him properly. She spent the day with Jake and Noah, helping clean the farmhouse and joining them for dinner. For a moment, the farmhouse felt warm, lively, like a family again. Before leaving that evening, Emily pulled Jake aside again. "You didn't just shelter us," she said. You reminded me what real kindness looks like. The next morning, Jake woke up to the sound of trucks outside. Confused, he opened the door to find workers unloading new kitchen appliances, repairing his roof, and resurfacing his driveway. Emily stood by her SUV, smiling warmly. "I know you didn't want payment," she said, "so consider this a thank you for helping two strangers when no one else would." Jake didn't know what to say. Emily stepped closer, her voice softening. "You gave us a safe place when we had nothing. Now let me give something back." Before she left, Lily ran up and hugged Jake tightly, whispering, "Thank you for saving us." Jake watched their SUV disappear down the road, feeling something he hadn't felt in years, hope. Not because his home was repaired, but because he realized kindness still mattered, and it still came back around. And so, a poor single dad with nothing but a good heart changed the life of a billionaire who had everything except trust and peace. This story reminds us that kindness doesn't need wealth, titles, or perfect timing. It only needs a willing heart. Because sometimes the smallest act of care becomes the biggest turning point in someone's life. And in the end, the kindness we give always finds its way back to us.